Welcome back, tribe. Have a episode here that's going viral from Educate. The UK is dying and I need to vent. So obviously, if you've been paying attention what's going on in the UK, this one alone here says everyone who can exit the UK is leaving. They're arresting people for memes. There's two-tier policing. They're being flooded with migrants and the locals are being basically priced out of everything. They get no support from the government and arrested. There was even, I think, a news report of an old man being arrested for saying how the police are protecting PEDs, child diddlers, and they've had a massive cover-up recently that has blown up in the media. They've tried to suppress it, where hundreds of thousands, I believe, I don't know how many tens of thousands, the number's insane, of children have been, done stuff to, and the police covered it up because it was from Middle Eastern groups. So got to be politically correct at the expense of your children's safety. Let's see.
Hello. My name is Kate, and I'm 29 years old. I am Scottish, 3/4 Scottish, 1/4 Irish, but I spent my whole life in Scotland and consider myself Scottish. However, since June of this year, 2024, I haven't lived in Scotland or any part of the UK. Firstly, I lived in Greenland for 4 months, which is very random, but I had a really cool job opportunity there. And then that was basically a fun folly, with afterwards the plan being to move to Hong Kong to teach English, which is where I've been for the past 2 months. And this is now my home. I'm not saying forever, but definitely for at least a year. And I want to talk to you a little bit about why I feel that way. So, small amount of context. This channel that I'm posting this on, it's got like 100 subscribers, so it's completely irrelevant. However, what I want it to be is a channel where I interview people. I interview people because I really enjoy that. I love talking to new people. I love learning new experiences. But why I'm kind of breaking the mold today and just talking to the camera is because the last person I interviewed was a guy called Daryl Solis. And Daryl, apologies, I've not talked to my GoPro before. And Daryl did a viral video about leaving the UK and why he chose to do that. And as I was having that conversation with him and reflecting on it afterwards, I realised there was so much more that I wanted to say as someone myself in a position who's chose to leave the UK. So let me tell you why I chose to leave the UK, why I feel better already for it, and why I would, with a heavy heart, and I mean that seriously, I do love my country a lot, but with a heavy heart, I would genuinely recommend that if you're watching this as a young person in the UK, you consider moving. So the first reason is that you're genuinely paid shit. Like,
I was just thinking that the only reason you would stay in America is to make money. I was just thinking of that right now. What she's describing, the thing the UK doesn't have is the really high salaries and pay. That's it. Oh, and they don't have First Amendment, Second Amendment, or the ability to just F off to the countryside and disappear. I mean, there's a lot of things America still has. You can make a great life for yourself, regardless of who's in power and the mismanagement, unless you live in California and your place is on fire and you lost your home. And then good luck getting a permit to rebuild your home because the bureaucracy won't let you. You got to wait for a year to get a permit, to get approved, to even remove all the fire damage from your property. And then maybe, just maybe, you'll get another permit years later to rebuild your home if the insurance company approves said rebuilding. And then you're basically forced to sell your land for pennies on the dollar. So not everywhere is good, but you could avoid the mess by getting away from the big cities. In the UK, not so much.
Even if you think you're on a good wage, half of that goes in taxes. That's if you're on a really good wage, right? And if you're not on a good wage, the reason you don't pay half in taxes is because the government knows that you need that money literally to survive. So the money you're making isn't to have fun with. It's literally to get you through the month so that you can work for the next month. We live in a country where if you try to better yourself by going to university, the interest you pay on your education means that it's basically guaranteed that for the rest of your working life, you're 10%, 9%. So 10% of that is going to be taken away from your salary. And if you're someone who isn't making that much to begin with, or did a degree that's completely vital for the economy, you might resent that for the rest of your life, 9% of your education but is taken away because of your education. Your choice to better yourself costs you so much money. And if you're like me, then you will have graduated but never had a graduate job. So you'll be paying 9% just for the experience, which quite frankly is bollocks because, for me personally, half of my experience of university was during COVID, so the experience wasn't there. But also just in terms of how I feel as someone with, an okay amount of intelligence, I don't attribute much of what I've learned in life to my university experience at all. It's just not worth it. It's very frustrating.
And it would be worth it, even the cost, everything she's saying, if she had a job that matched her graduate level education, but she doesn't. You see, and that's the same problem we have in America, except worse because our tuition costs are way worse. So you graduate with the entire mortgage on your back that you can't discharge. Don't know what the rules are in the UK for that, but I know America has one of the worst post-secondary education systems in the world in terms of finances and the financial impact it has on an individual. So imagine you go to school all these years, you get a doctorate, PhD in something, and there's no job for you. Hell, there's no job for you even coming out with a bachelor's in a vast majority of the disciplines that people are learning about today, unless you're in some STEM. And even STEM, part of the technology side is being threatened by AI. So all the coder monkeys and the guys that just run maintenance on code and programs, they're getting absolutely decimated right now. It's really hard for a computer science degree graduate to find a job unless you're absolutely talented or you have your own startup where you made your own app. So we're back to square one, entrepreneurship. You got to get it on your own, regardless of how you're educated. And most of your jobs got shipped overseas already, or the H-1B visa conversation, which is absolutely massive today in the United States because they're hiring these people that you are qualified for this job, but they don't want to pay you the salary that you should be making. So they'll bring in these cheap migrants, immigrants on H-1B visas. They tell you it's for the best of the economy because they're highly educated. And it turns out that they're coming to our country with bogus degrees, underprepared, underexperienced, with very little technical skills for the position that they're supposed to be working. And then there's the biases of these people at the top that are also H-1B visas that worked their way up there earlier, hiring people of their own kind instead of Americans. It's real. And they've even went into the H-1B visa database and seen like dog groomer is one of the jobs, landscaper, crazy shit like that. It's like, what does that have to do with the H-1B visa? It's a flawed system. I get what it's trying to do. We want rocket scientists. We want jet propulsion technology from the smartest minds in the world, spacefaring minds that think about like gravity and terraforming planets and developing like new polymers or metallurgy that allows us to do crazy things in construction. We're not getting those people, not even close. We're getting people with like crap degrees from like, paper mill style colleges overseas that like you pay, you get a piece of paper, and then that unlocks your H-1B visa to the United States, and then you could become a fucking dog groomer or something. It's insane. Dude, the system is so broken. Tack on DEI and diversity and inclusion bullshit and ESG and whatever else woke shit is in corporate America, and you can see how normal everyday Americans are beginning to get priced out. Not even priced out of the economy, but absolutely set aside because you can't even get hired. So you're forced to do gig work.
To owe a government so much money when you just don't feel that you've got much back in return. And it's the same with taxes. Look, I grew up really...
And for the UK, it's insane. So imagine the government takes over half of your money and then gives it to migrants, to refugees, they call them. What refugees, bro? Those are just young men, war-ready men, soldiers. Like there's nobody coming from a war-torn area with their family, a guy and his wife and his 3 little kids and like a baby. No, dude, it's just like boats full of 20-year-old men. Okay.
I grew up left leaning. I'm still left leaning in principle, in theory, but
Theory.
it's
Not
if your
working.
if you can't see where your taxes are going, it's so stressful. It's so stressful that such a high percentage of your income can be taken away from you when you know what you could do with that to better your life. And in the process of bettering your life, better the lives of the people around you and society. You know, if you could get a house and if you could, you know, invest in some skill sets, blah, 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 with that money, that would be good for the economy. That would be good for your community. But instead, you throw it down a money hole. That's really what it feels like. I had poor mental health a few years ago, and I was told it was a priority that I get therapy. And I was put on a waiting list for therapy. And 15 months later, I got a call to start therapy. And by then, I had to decline it because my address had changed. So the area that I was entitled to it for, I was no longer in. And
Wow.
I was considered critical. I was the priority, and it took 15 months. Now, I got to sort myself out in that case. So, but so many people don't. Some people literally die. And I'm gutted for them. I have a younger sister who is quite severely disabled, and
Isn't it strange? Like, you ever take a step back and ask the question, like, if it takes your own citizen, tax-paying citizen, 15 months to get mental health treatment considered in critical condition, a priority, 15-month waiting list, but the government is handing out stipends for food, for housing, for healthcare to migrants that come over. Day one, walk across the border or land on a boat, throw away your passport and documentation in the ocean, in the sea, and you get preferential treatment above the citizens that pay taxes. Why? Why does it take you, the taxpayer, 15 months to go see a doctor? Yet this person can land on your country's soil and reap all the benefits of your tax dollars. How are they not rioting in the street? How, like, the whole country should be burning, turning upside down. It's insane. Like, where is this passivity that we're seeing in the UK and other parts of Western Europe and, you know, parts of America? Like, Californians have been, for example, voting for their policies for the longest time ever, thinking they're the progressive ones. But California is slowly turning red. Will they turn red after this fire that's consumed all those houses? I don't know. The rich people are about to find out that their progressive ideology doesn't work in principle in the real world because of all this corruption.
So she's just, it's a very clear-cut situation where she's someone who completely needs support and will never, you know, will never get a house based on, you know, of the money she's saved or anything. She's entitled to supported living accommodation. And she got on the waiting list this year.
Wow.
And in Dumfries and Galloway, it could be 5 to 10 years before she gets
Benefits.
supported living accommodation. So in 10 years' time, theoretically, could be when she moves out of mum's.
You hear, like, just question it, man. It takes her 10 years to get off the waiting list and get support for being low income. Yet a migrant can get housing and food immediately. Does no one think, like, what's going on here? What are the priorities? Why is this happening? Why are borders so open? Why are they so against the citizens, the ones that are paying taxes? Why are they enforcing laws that are punishing people for simply asking questions? Is this the system you want to live in? Is this a form of tyranny? I don't know what you want to, whatever you want to call this system, democracy, capitalism, all that bullshit. It's not in your best interest as the average citizen. Never was. Look at what happened to people in Hawaii when they lost their homes. Nothing. Look at the people in, what was it, Michigan? Nothing. The Ohio, right? Was it I forgot what town that was where that train exploded with all the chemicals. What happened to them? Did they get reimbursed for anything? Nothing. The people with Flint, Michigan, again, with the water. Remember what happened? They were being poisoned and shit. It was a first world country, guys. And they didn't have clean tap water. What happened? Did the municipal government help them? Nope, nothing. You're on your own. And that's the message they're sending to all of us. You are on your own, but we still need you to pay taxes. Strange.
By then, she will be in her late 30s. This is someone with dreams to be independent. And by then, my mum will be in her late 60s and will have looked after my sister for 38 years. Obviously, you should be such a primary part of caring for your loved ones when they're sick or disabled. That's how it's always worked. But the idea that there's basically no chance of support, and the idea that, unless you're mega rich, you just have to accept that situation. It's such a disservice to my sister. It's a disservice to my mother, who has paid taxes her entire life, who's always contributed so much to this economy. Now that it's time for her to get something back, she's not going to, or, at least not for basically ever. And also, when I think about the fact that my sister's very well cared for by my mum is someone who enjoys caring for my sister and, can basically do it. When I consider that that's the best case scenario, but out there in Scotland, there are so many far more compromising situations where they will also be told it'll take 10 years. And, lives are falling apart in those situations. People are being abused. Finances are being ruined. It's very upsetting. It's very upsetting to me. If I could just circle back to mental health in the UK, I think every aspect of how mental health is treated in the UK is so damaging for the mentally unwell. Because first of all, if you're a young person, you're quite obsessed with mental health. We're always analysing our feelings. We're always diagnosing ourselves based on stuff that we see online. We're constantly talking about mental health. But we're stuck at that stage where we're over-analysing ourselves, but no real help is given. And that's the worst of both. What you want is that you get the opportunity to be self-aware, and you get the opportunity to explore who you are, vulnerabilities and all, but that you don't stay in that stage where you're kind of thinking, oh, who am I? What am I? Why do I feel like this? That stage is important because it then takes you to the next stage, which is action. But we don't get to have action when the NHS just can't support you. You have to, and I'm sorry to be blunt, you have to literally have a suicide attempt or something crazy before you're urgent enough that they can really prioritise you. And then what does it mean that, even when that happens, does it mean that you get to make a full recovery and you're really looked after, and a thorough investigation into your mental health is done from a holistic perspective as well as a medical one? Very unlikely. And if that's true for mental health, it would be true for physical health as well. I think because of these riots that happened this summer, it's just obvious that people are very unhappy. Now, depending on where you sit politically, you might feel that unhappiness is legitimately because of immigration. Or you might feel that that's misplaced anger and that it's actually about other things, or you might feel it's a bit of both. But either way, people in the UK are livid. They're so angry because we were brought up being told we lived in one of the best countries in the world. That you were so lucky compared to other places. Now, of course, that's true. But if every month you're working just to get through that month, and you are living in a place that isn't that nice, that's taken all your money in rent to pay for some like rich person's 7th holiday this year. And, you know, you don't feel respected at work. The weather isn't nice. You're anxious, you're becoming increasingly anxious because you're aware that you're aging and that you don't have a pension, and that you're never going to be able to afford a house. And oh shit, like, can I even consider if I want kids? You know, because if I can't even afford kids, then is it even good for me to even consider if I can have kids? And if I can't have kids and I don't have my own place and I've no money, do I even want to date? Do I, you know, even want to feel that I have an opinion? Do I want to, you know, really pursue my dreams? Can I?
I wish politicians would watch that portion alone of why family planning is in the gutter, why marriage is in the gutter, and dating is in the gutter. She just perfectly described the feelings everyone is having in terms of family planning. It is underpinned by economic policy. I've been screaming and shouting about that, but people want to say it's like men versus women. It's this cultural, you know, whatever flavor of the month versus that culture. It's the entitlement. All this is underpinned by economic factors. The animal is stressed out. It can't feed itself. So it lashes out with stupid ideas, stupid behaviors. You know, when we have men and women arguing with each other, the other half is just completely retreating and becoming hermits, just like she is. A vast majority of people are just absolutely too stressed out to even consider family planning, kids, anything like that, because budgets are stretched so thin. You can't even fathom feeding another mouth. You can't even fathom spending money on a date when you're living like this. It's insane.
It takes so much from you. It's very upsetting. I didn't feel this upset a few years ago. A few years ago, I would have said, look, everywhere's got their problems, which is true. And I would have said, you know, a lot of this comes from a lack of perspective. If you go to other places, you'd realise that you've got it better. The people love to moan, etc., etc. Well, I've now been to quite a few places, I'm very lucky to say. And of course, it's true that everyone's got their problems. But this idea that the UK is better than everywhere else, it's just bollocks.
When you travel overseas as an American, you find that out too. Most Americans that have never traveled overseas will keep saying America is the greatest country on earth. And that's the propaganda they sold you. Go to Dubai, see how a city is run, see how it's supposed to be in safety, cleanliness, how everything is operating as it should, how frictionless the government is if you need paperwork done or something completed. It doesn't take you 10 million years. Go to their version of the DMV to get your license. Go see how that works properly. Go get a passport. Go get whatever national ID you need. Completely different. Guys, until you see what other systems are like around the world, and it seems like the Middle East, the rich part of those countries, and parts of Asia are running exceptionally well. Everywhere has its problems, but I'm telling you, this propaganda that you live in the greatest country on earth and that everything is perfect and that you should accept how your life looks like when you're struggling like this is absolute propaganda bullshit. Go overseas. See for yourself. Yes, certain aspects are better, certain aspects are worse, but you come back with the feeling of there's no excuse why we aren't number one in everything. That's how you should be feeling. There's no excuse why America, every city in America should look like what Dubai looks like. There's no excuse why we don't look like Singapore. There's no excuse why we don't have public transportation like China does. And their massive gargantuan train stations that are absolutely clean. What is going on with our country? That's what we should be asking. Where's all our tax money going to? What are we paying into if our streets, our bridges, our water supply, random shit is falling apart? You have to ask these questions. That's what it means to be a citizen, to be a patriot. You don't accept on face value what the government tells you. You question everything and you look for the weaknesses so you can rebuild your country stronger. Nobody's like, we're blindly supposed to accept that we're the greatest without ever looking internally and going, but what could we improve on? How could you be the best if you never critique yourself?
You know, that mindset we have is really holding us back. It really stops us from feeling that we can complain. Yeah. Oh, so what made my mind change a few years ago is that I graduated from a pretty good uni, if I may say so. I applied for a shit ton of graduate jobs and I couldn't find any. And for a while, I was actually okay with that because it's like, well, this is, you're going to spend the whole of your life in a good job. So if you have 2 or 3 years where you don't, and you're doing waitressing, which is fun, but not making you a lot of money, and that's cool. You've no responsibilities right now anyway. Anyway, years and years went by where I was always applying and doing this minimum wage job waitressing, which I did enjoy it, but there's no money in it, there's no respect, and eventually it really compromises your CV if it's all you can say you've done. How I managed to be a waitress, so someone on minimum wage, but still not live at home with my parents, was that I was a live-in waitress. So I worked in a hotel that I also lived in staff accommodation in the side of.
Jeez.
And the hotel, it's nothing that dramatic, but it was just one of these hotels where like the managers above you make 50p more, but they're dead arsey to you. They think that makes them it, even though they're not necessarily better at the job, they've just been there longer or whatever. And then, the people that own the hotel are quite out of touch. They don't pay you extra at Christmas. They don't, you've worked for them for ages, but they don't know your name, etc., etc. I found that I was becoming quite resentful that I worked there, considering my education, which I understand is very snobby. I'm just being honest about how I was feeling. And I was beginning to feel like I'm behind in life. This isn't where I want to be. Because I'm working for less money than I need. And I'm working to...
Well, she has a right to feel that way because she got educated. She got a PhD. Why are you being a waitress? Why do you make less than what you should, what you were promised had you gotten educated? Especially at that level. Not just a bachelor's, but you went beyond. And there's no job for you.
To make someone else millions who I don't care for because they don't care for me. And I enjoy the job in that I like interacting with other people. I like giving people good experiences, but this isn't my passion, But then I slowly realised, Kate, you've got it good. Most people your age in the UK either live with their parents or they live in a city and they get to have all the independence that comes with that and all the, some cool memories going out, drinking and stuff, but they pay a shit ton for that. So even if you're in a good job, like say you're making 50 grand, which would be twice as much as what I was making as a waitress, once you take off the tax and you take off the very high rent, these people probably have less expendable income at the end of each month than you do. In fact, I know that they do. And that put things into perspective for me, because then I had to realise your life's not what you want it to be, Kate. Your life doesn't feel that good right now, but you have got it good in comparison to...
Look how far the West has fallen. I've seen enough. You want to see her video, links in the description. You have to, I don't want to even call it coping, but you have to convince yourself that you have it good because you're a PhD doctorate graduate. You're working as a server, waitress, and because simply that you were given accommodation by your slave masters, that you somehow have it good in one of the greatest countries to be born in. This is how far we've fallen. That accommodation from your employer, modern day slavery, is somehow considered having it good than most people in her countries that are making, say, 50,000 pounds, but because of taxes and expenses of finally being able to afford your own place, you end up with less expendable income than maybe she has. That's insane. That's a failed system. And this guy said, I'll read the comments because there's probably a bunch of people that feel the same way. I'm a well-paid engineer, but I can't even effing buy a home. I think our societies are headed towards a perfect storm. When you accept that they're intentionally trying to destroy you, it makes a lot more sense. This randomly came up on my feed and was everything I, an Australian 38-year-old male, have been thinking for a long time. When a CEO starts selling their own company shares, it's a warning sign. The UK has been selling its assets to foreign investors for years. The ship is almost sunk. This guy says, I'm Danish and have been working in London for the past 5 months with 1 month left until I return to Denmark. And the experience has rocked me to the core. In response, I've decided to devote my life to ensuring Denmark's security and continued reliance on law and order so that the chaos I've witnessed on the other side of the North Sea does not spread to Danish borders. Good luck, Britannia. Sheesh. Australia is pretty much the same, going down the toilet. I've seen YouTubers who move to places like Thailand or Vietnam where life is more affordable and chillax. 2 of my sons took their lives at age 30 and 36 because they were so hopeless about life. One had just completed his medical residency and was about to start training as a neurologist in the local training hospital. The elder had been a lawyer, hated the injustice, restrained in nursing, and his debts for training were so high he felt trapped. Wow. Both left the world. I totally understand how stupid life is becoming for each generation. Landlords own too much of the housing. There's multiple homeowners class and who pay ridiculous rents and will never own a home or pay off their education debts. One of my eldest survives. You're totally right. Jesus. It isn't dying. It's going back to its original state, which is a bunch of peasants parentheses, citizens, ruled over by lords, parentheses, finance/capital class. Okay, your concerns are shared globally. There's something terribly sinister about the period of history we're living in. The young and the elderly are feeling the impact the worst. It's as if we're all in the process of becoming indentured servants to a handful of obscure power brokers. Your powerfully frank discussion exactly what we all need to hear, as too many of us are feeling completely alone, alienated, helpless to take any control over their own destiny. Yeah. So look at this guy. Came from Poland to UK in 2009. I'm a well-educated network engineer that gets paid pretty okay. I still don't have a house. Simply can't afford it. My cousins in Poland are buying houses on minimum wage in Poland. I'm planning to go back in the near future. Accepting thousands of people that contribute nothing but demand everything will have an impact. This is how it is. What you describe is very similar to the situation here in Sweden. Nobody wants to have children anymore. It's impossible to live a normal life without loans and credits. The gaps are increasing dramatically at the same rate as taxes and fees. This guy says, I feel sorry for those who still think there's a difference between Labour and Conservatives in the UK. They're simply different faces of the same beast. The fact that we are locked in a two-party system is indicative of the country's failure to make any meaningful change at the top level. Echo that with America's sentiment. If someone is telling you your problems don't matter because other people have problems, that is an insult. They're putting you down. They're trying to teach you to put yourself down. The fact that other people have problems or whether those problems are worse than yours is completely and utterly irrelevant to the problems you have, how you feel about them and what to do about them. This notion exploits the proclivity of intelligent and far-sighted people to rationalize suffering, which they do better than anyone else. The notion is a rationalization, but it is also misanthropic and fallacious. Yeah, the left versus right divide is a false dichotomy. The ultra-rich fund both sides, ensuring policies favor their interests regardless of who wins. They thrive on a discontented population, as discontent drives consumerism. Here's one that's awake. A united working class with class consciousness would threaten their control. So they promote division to maintain power and profit from the status quo. Red or blue, they don't care about you. Just look who the donors are for Trump's campaign or who J.D. Vance was working under. Guys, it's all a charade. It's a show. Trust me, things won't change. We've been headed downhill for Team Red, Team Blue for the last 50, 60 years. Doesn't matter. Populist rhetoric is very popular today in general. Anytime you get somebody that says they're speaking for the people, but they're backed by billionaire class money, you should raise your eyebrows. I'm just saying, I hope things change. For the sake of America. It's been on my mind recently, but like I said, don't hold your breath. As you've seen from this video, you're pretty much on your own. We'll see you guys on the next one. Thoughts on this video? If you haven't subscribed to the second channel, join me on the private community for the private calls. We have about 10 more days in Thailand, and then we'll be back in Romania finally. Missing some of the creature comforts, bed, pillow, food. And excited to get back on the grind every day. Could only vacation for so long before you get stir crazy. So we'll be interested in how people are feeling about this video in the comments below it, because I know a lot of you are feeling this right now, and people never put their finger accurately on the pain point of what's going on. we're always caught on the surface level division. So, but never looking up at the ones who write the laws. Strange how that works. Take care, everybody. See you on the next one.